Always trust.
We ask the questions.
What is needed in the world?
Njegovo nagrađivano djelo, Ekonomija dobra i zla, tragom ekonomske misli od Gilgameša do Wall Streeta, donijelo mu je međunarodnu slavu i mjesto na listi 100 najutjecajnijih svjetskih mislilaca. Sa 24 godine je postao ekonomski savjetnik češkog predsjednika Václava Havela, a potom i član Nacionalnog ekonomskog vijeća. Proteklih 10 godina prepoznatljiv je po inspirativnim govorima i debatama o aktuelnim ekonomskim temama kojima pristupa sa filozofskog, mitološkog i religijskog stajališta. O ekonomskim izazovima današnjice, strukturnim problemima zapadnih društava i novoj geopolitičkoj stvarnosti za Al Jazeeru govori Tomáš Sedláček.
Mr. Sedláček, welcome to Al Jazeera's program.
Thank you for having me.
10 years ago, you were speaking about crisis of the euro, about Greek debt crisis, and then you warned that there are some structural problems in the Western economies. They could hit back, and that happened. We are now in the period of stagflation. Prices are rising as never before. Did you see that coming?
Well, I didn't see it coming with such force and with such attitude and with such multiplicity of crises, because what we have been doing in our lifetimes is we've been pushing the problems into the future and hoping that they will somehow solve themselves. And this is easy to say in personal life, in psychoanalysis, or we do this quite nicely. Actually, there's an interesting, biblical analogy, because in the original languages, the word for sin and debt is the same. Also in modern German, Schuld means both sin and both debt. So sin is a little bit also, sin means moving the problem into the future and acquiring something that you are not legitimate for. So if I buy a golden Rolls Royce, I need to take a debt because the society doesn't give me enough income to buy it. But if I feel like I owe, that I deserve one, I can do it through a little bit of a sin, a little bit of a cheat. I take a loan and I push the payment into the future. But in economics, we don't have to be very soft about it. We can measure it to the last penny. So this disbalancing of the Western society is called deficit. And when you accumulate it, every single time you run one, it becomes debt. And we've been running our economies like this. And I was saying back in the day that Greece isn't an outlier. It isn't something that we should be surprised about. What's surprising that not more countries are going bankrupt like Greece. And even then I was saying that Greece is ahead of us. Greece is more advanced in this. Well, and in the meantime, we had, of course, the migration crisis, we had COVID crisis, now we have the war crisis, and ecological crisis on top of it. We are a little bit lucky that the crises have been, except for the ecological one, which was there all along, but all the other crises were a little bit, as nasty as they were at least gentlemen enough to come one at a time. But there is no guarantee in the structure of the real that there is no check against them coming all at once. And this is something that actually could happen. We could have a flashback of the corona crisis. Autumn is coming. This could be connected with a huge migrant wave, especially from, let's say, hungry countries of the world, together with the war economy, combined with ecological disaster. So all of this could happen at the same time. The stock market is as high as it was. This was also the problem of the 2008-9 crisis. If you look at the macro data, it looked like the sky today, no problem. The sky was blue, the sun was shining, American unemployment was low, GDP growth was high, stock exchange was going through the roof. There really wasn't the problem. And then I call it full throttle bankruptcy. You know, usually we think that the country has to be going slowly into slow levels of depth or maybe even negative depth, and then it collapses. But the American collapse of 2008, 2009 was a full throttle bankruptcy. Today we are not better, we are much worse. The amount of debt, or the, let's say, psychological instability has grown, maybe even for reasonable reasons. I mean, during the coronavirus, that was actually legitimate to go into debt. But our problem was that, and still is, that we go into debt even when we don't need it. And then, of course, our reserves are exhausted in the situations when we actually do need it.
How dangerous is this European dependence on others, on Russian gas and oil, on Chinese industry? It's like there is no alternative.
Yeah. Well, we are fully capable of bankrupting ourselves even without, let's say, Russian or Chinese help. This is what happened in 2008. I wrote a big article and I said, hey, no Russians involved in this one, no Chinese involved in this one. It was us, not only Europeans, but the Western society driving on. The problem isn't in capitalism. The problem is in what I call growth capitalism, that we need to grow every year, every month, every minute. It's like, and I have nothing against growth. It's like I have nothing against good weather. But it would be very stupid of me, it would be a recipe for very sad life if I was expecting every day to be a good weather day. Simply, that's just a recipe for very sad life, because I'll be disappointed and I will thinking maybe it's my fault that the weather is not good today. And also, structurally speaking, a ship that can only drive on good weather is not a good ship. You need a ship that is able to not sink when the winds don't blow, or not sink when the winds are too strong. And I'm afraid that we've been constructing a ship for good weather only. And we've been selling stability in order to buy growth. And we have taken Keynesian philosophy, which was already a little bit dangerous when Keynes was inventing it and he was warning against it. But basically what Keynes said was, you can run deficits providing you are able to run surpluses in good years. So we took only the first half of this sentence and we made it, you can run deficits, period. And this is of course not true. So now we are in a very fragile situation. Russia, for example, is an economy that, in a way, now that I look at it, it seems obvious, but it wasn't obvious to me before the Russian attack. It was an economy that was preparing itself for war. They had very little debt, in meaning that, God forbid, there should be a full-scale war. It will be difficult for Western countries to actually go further in debt, because we are in, not quite like Greece, but we are much nearer to it than the totalitarian regimes of Russia and China. So Russia could amount, even though it's much poorer economy than many European countries, let alone Europe per se, their reserve in being able to take more loans, let's say maybe from China or from Russian domestic banks, is higher than ours. So that's one thing. Second thing, they've been closing their economy from foreign exposure. And thirdly, they've been meddling with their reserves and actually having foreign reserves, thinking that might help potentially disbalanced ruble. So we've been, again, as much as I hate saying this, that we forgot about war. I was quite happy I forgot about war as well. This was, we were brought up in thinking that we solved the problem. We thought that we are already a civilization that values human life or human capital, if to translate it in, this is funny, when you speak to an economist, you have to put the word capital there. Then it makes sense, human life, well, I don't know, but human capital, oh, okay, that makes finally. And so now we Westerners value human capital. We know that this is the most pristine and most important part of the wealth of the economy is human capital, not petrol, not gas, not timber, not natural resources, not even the space of land. But what makes a country rich is human knowledge, human spirit, human ingenuity. In one word, human creativity combined with freedom. So we thought that age of killing people because land or because natural resources or because of access to sea is already past. It's like the time when we thought that wearing digital watches was pretty cool, you know, that we used to do that in the 90s. Now we don't do that anymore, showing everybody that we, you know, can do calculations on our watches. So we forgot, and again we had this sunny side up attitude that everything is fine, and now suddenly we woke up in the world where our Western values have been attacked. On one hand, I think it's the first time that I think in our generation that actually Europe sees the spirit of Europe. Because before we were wondering what is it that we're doing. I was very often thinking, who am I writing these articles against? Of course, everybody understands and fights for freedom and democracy and free trade. But the example of Hungary, or partially even Czech politics, represented by some very high-standing politicians. You can hear these trends sometimes even in Germany or Austria, that we would rather give up our values, in this case, for example, protecting Ukraine, because of a little bit cheaper petrol. If we do it this way, I think we've already lost it, and Putin will just take one country after another because we won't let go of whatever it is. By the way, just because it's gas and petroleum from Russia, we are dependent on the Netherlands. We're dependent on chips, without which we can't live. The economy today is so interdependent that our dependency on Russia, even though it seems huge, isn't actually that large. If we cut off, I don't know, Italy, it would be a much bigger problem for Europe than cutting off Russia. So it's not like Russia is holding us under the neck. Every country is holding every other country under the neck, if you want to look at it this way. This was quite visible also in Greece. You know, I was always telling my friends, bankers, what do you mean? You lend to hundreds of countries, and of course, in your calculations, you must have the possibility of one of them go bankrupt. No, this is the whole idea of the interest rate. You know, we have to have the possibility of bankruptcy. This is why we charge so high interest rates. And now one small economy goes bankrupt, and this would mean that the whole European banking would go belly up, or half of it would go bankrupt. This is, you haven't done your due diligence very well, because obviously your interest rates were too low, because you were not expecting the actual possibility of really materializing the part of interest rate which expects or has a probability of the country going bankrupt.
What could be implications of this, again, Cold War polarization in the world?
It's very sad for me, because I believe that mankind is on a fast track to civilization type 1, which is a civilization that is planetary. We are in the year 2022, and we still don't have any global rules. I mean, there are global suggestions. Please don't occupy other countries, but if you do, well, you know, what can you do? You know, so we have very strict rules in the country. You know, if I cross as a pedestrian on a red light, somebody will, you know, give me a fine, or if I drive too fast, immediately, small little thing compared to killing children in schools, for which there is no punishment, and yet I get punished, or you, for small little details compared to what we see happening in Ukraine. So on a planetary level, we as mankind is a civilization that cannot coordinate itself. We can coordinate ourselves on the level of nation. There we don't debate, it's clear. We have pension system, we have healthcare system, we have taxes. Nobody debates this. On a European level, comme ci, comme ça, you know how difficult it is. Sometimes we move forward, but not as, etc., etc. But on the planetary level, nothing. So I was a great believer in this. Perhaps I'm not so wrong. Perhaps if we meet each other in 10 years again, I can make a little prophecy. I believe that we are actually heading towards what I call the new republic of internet. That we are coming of res publica in terms of the original meaning of common thing through the internet, and we will be able to have new forms of government exactly because internet. Now internet, the community that we are forming on the internet, in some respects it doesn't look like a nation state or res publica or Czech Republic, for example, or other, but in other cases it looks much more republic than the actual national republic, according at least to Plato and Aristotle and the antique Greeks. So, for example, it doesn't have borders, one of the defining characteristics of nations, but it does have a voting system. It's not the same like we have, but it even has its own currency, be it crypto or maybe my little bit more favorite or interesting currency, which is the currency of likes. It's sort of becoming a currency of its own. Even small children can pay with likes. So this is now my hope that that we will be able to be close with each other, not because we were born and live in the same apartment. In fact, I don't even know my neighbors very much, but I do have a very good friend in China with whom I share music or same passion for books. So this was my great hope in this new republic of internet. Now it looks like it might bifurcate, that we might not head towards globalization as Fukuyama predicted, but that we might actually be realizing Huntingtonian, Samuel Huntington, who said it might not be globalization, it might be regionalization. So inside of Europe we will have, or inside of Fortress Europe will have freedoms inside, but very big walls, maybe like Game of Thrones, very big walls around Europe and other blocks. This, I think, would be unfortunate, but I also think this is not the final word. If there is one thing that we can learn from economics, is that everything goes in cycles. So my optimistic great hope is that like the birth of European Union, which is undoubtedly the greatest project or revolution even maybe, if you look at it a little bit fast forward, it actually really is a huge revolution. Only it took 2 generations. That needed Second World War. European Union probably would not have never started without the bloody atrocities of the Second World War. And so likely, I also believe that beyond this, we would be able to, maybe in 10 years, maybe a little bit later, to come back together. And instead of relying on religion, which we have done in the past, I mean, Europe was very Christian in the Middle Ages, but now, in the secular times, we are behaving more Christian-like towards each other when we are no longer officially Christians than when we actually were Christians. And this beautiful trick was done, and I'm very critical towards the economy, but I'm critical in the same way like a movie critic doesn't hate movies, but is critical exactly because he or she likes movies. For the same reason, I'm somewhat critical towards economics. It creates a lot of problems that are known to us, and we're trying to deal with them. But there is one big advantage, and that advantage is that, and this is what the fathers of economics, as fathers of European Union came with, instead of "Make love, not war," which was a hippie slogan. I used to be a hippie when I was younger. It's a little bit take Christianity, or actually what most religions tell us, make love, love each other, love your brother, love even your enemy, don't war with each other. So this turned out to be too idealistic, that never really worked. So the fathers of European Union came with a more cynical version, and that was make trade, not war. You don't need to have same opinions like the Germans or the French or the Austrians or the Dutch or even Finns, as long as you respect each other enough to trade. And this has resulted, maybe stupid little trick. Who would have guessed that this would lead to 60 years of really solid peace within Europe? And it's pity that we who studied economics exactly because of these blessing reasons, now have to use economics as a weapon, and this is exactly what happened vis-a-vis Russia. As an advanced civilization, we don't attack with bullets, but we attack with more sophisticated weapons, which is the economy.
As we are approaching to the digital age, as they call it, fourth industrial revolution, what is your opinion on the power some technology giants have? You can watch them as a states, really.
Yeah.
You know, Amazon, Tesla, Facebook, Google. How do you look at the power that they have?
Yeah, this is an extremely interesting question, because they have similar power like the Catholic Church, for example, only because people believe it. If nobody would believe the Catholic story, then the Pope, could do any of his dances and it wouldn't change anything. Also, I remember Václav Havel, our revolutionary president. He once had a very good observation. He was watching two countries playing hockey against each other, and he was saying, "Look, I don't want to name a name of a company, but just imagine a big name of a company, company A and company B, and the national symbols were actually quite small." And he was looking and saying, "Hey, look! It looks like company A is playing against company B rather than Czech Republic against Netherlands." And this is, in fact, I think what we are seeing, this sort of a post-national cyber company punk, if you will, where even my most the philosopher that I like the least, Karl Marx, even he was prophesying about the withering of the state. And you can see this very well because the state is being withered away in both directions. The important things, so take for example Czech Republic or Serbia or any country, the most important things such as ecology, such as war, are already above us. We don't decide these things, not even the United States of America. Even when George W. Bush wanted to, wage his war, this was not the most powerful man. Couldn't just, he needed some allies. So the big responsibilities, ecology and others, are shifting above. And what kind of a bridge do we build across? That also has nothing to do with the government. That's for us proggers. And thanks to internet, we are seeing for the first time maybe coming from a communist country. I still remember it when I was 13. There was always the proletariat of the world unite. I remember as a small boy, I was thinking, what does that mean? Does it mean that we do a dance or we eat the same soup? How is that unification possible? Well, today it happened. Because every idea needs capital. So if you want to have democracy, you need to have the building of the parliament. If you want to have, I don't know, even meditation chamber, you still need the cleaning lady, and you still need somebody to put the. So you need organizational capital, which is a good thing because that stops a lot of good ideas, but also a lot of stupid ideas. Bureaucracy must not be underestimated because thanks to bureaucracy, a lot of stupid ideas are also blocked. So that would be bureaucracy at its best. Slowing down, mainly stupid ideas. But why am I saying this is now this organizational capital is almost zero thanks to internet. So the whole proletariat of the world can really unite and have a whole original voice without a government representation. So companies, and I think it will be the challenge for maybe our children, is the nation states have already discovered the power of unification. In European Union, this is what we are doing. Companies, not yet. Just imagine if companies come together and Uber together with Microsoft, together with Google, together with Amazon, together with Airbnb, for example, says, hey, you want to treat Airbnb badly in this city? Well, then no Netflix for you, or something like this. So I'm not giving any hints, but I think this might be the next nation belonging in this new republic of internet. We will be identified not where we were born geographically, but our inclination towards open source versus Apple, etc., etc. That's quite likely.
Mr. Sedláček, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.